Good, okay. So now we're official. Shall we look at the agenda? I see your cursor, Laura.
Yeah.
There we go. So we're calling the meeting to order at 10:35. The meetings were circulated by Laura or Heather, maybe both. Any comments on the minutes? They seem pretty straightforward. You want to look at them, anybody, or I guess should we confirm a quorum first?
Yes. Hi, Bill. This is Laura from DOS. I'm looking at the attendees, and I just want to confirm I don't see anybody from the city of New York. If anybody from the city of New York, yeah. Okay. And then APA. I don't see APA on. Okay. But we do have quorum.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Quorum noted. So the next item is the minutes of the early summer meeting of is it June, I guess. Anybody want to look at them, or is there a motion to approve?
This is
I
how
also
I
move to approve. Second.
Is that you, Matt?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're getting good in the minutes. Any opposed? Okay, so the motion is carried unanimously to approve the minutes. Usually we have to correct it for attendees, but I guess we got it right this time. All right, it's September. This is the next to the last week this year, and the project approval process is the next item on the agenda. Josh, do you mind if I do the Niceo thing?
Yeah, no, please go ahead, Bill. Thanks.
Okay, so this will just follow up on our report at the earlier meeting, the most recent meeting. We are proceeding in class year 2021. The project is proceeding with two queue positions. The first queue position is 631. That is the original 1,000 megawatt project. The second queue position, also proceeding in the class year, is 887. That's for the 250 megawatt uprate that the Public Service Commission has approved and the Department of Energy has approved. The class year schedule that the Niceo has offered is that they want to conclude the class year 2021 work in the second quarter of next year. We are getting some feedback. If somebody could go on mute, I think that's what it's coming from. Okay, I'll keep going. So the class year 2021 is mostly the participants are mostly battery projects, storage projects. So if anyone wants to sort of do an inventory, they can do that on the Niceo website. We are working on an interconnection agreement with the New York Power Authority and the New York Independent System Operator and Consolidated Edison. It's going quite well. I'm happy to report that. And we may be ready to execute that by the time of our next meeting in December. So it's basically business as usual at the Niceo in class year 2021. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. I can't think of anything else on the NYSO front to report. It's been pretty quiet. Their cost of carbon project seems to be on the back burner at the moment. So not really much to report, sort of in a general way, as opposed to the class year update. Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Josh for a general update as to where the project is. And so take it away, Josh. You're on mute, Josh. Oh, maybe he dropped.
It's *6 to unmute from your phone.
And before Josh starts, did we have anybody else join? I just heard a beep.
Hello?
There's
Can
Josh.
you hear me? Sorry for the technical difficulties. Okay, so I'm just going over, this is Josh from TDI. Just looking through the June minutes, I'll just kind of update it based on the order there. So as we reported in June, we submitted a bid, Hydro-Quebec submitted a bid that we partnered with NYSERDA. That process is still going. I don't have any other updates beyond that. We are working on things that we need for our financing, which we're still planning to hold towards the end of this year. Specifically, there's a fair amount of work going on with IDAs on tax agreements or pilot agreements. We've reached several agreements with several IDAs in the state, and so that's taking a fair amount of our effort now, so we can get tax certainty for the project over the long haul. And I think those conversations are going well. And as I said, some of those agreements are actually completed already. And then there's just a fair amount of other kind of in the weeds work to get prepared for a financial close. We do have an amendment under review with the PSC, as we reported in June. That's an amendment to add a converter station in New Scotland, New York, which would enable us to bring in renewable power from upstate New York. That amendment is also under review, and there's been no decisions made on that. And then that's really what we're doing. I don't really have any other material updates besides that. So happy to take questions, or Bill, if I missed anything, please add on there.
No, it's really more or less the same report as June, other than the fact that the pace of closing preparations is picking up. With a big closing like this, there's a lot to do. But we're still hoping to close the deal, by the end of the year or thereabouts, and that's when the trust would be funded, is when we do the financial closing. I did confirm that the bank that we selected, and I think this goes back 6 years, was Mellon Bank. And I can't remember, I think it was somebody from Trout Unlimited had the memory of what bank it was, but we actually have that trust agreement negotiated and in place and ready to go. So that's good news. We don't have to worry about that. We can sort of just dust that off and proceed when we get closer to the closing. Steve, if you're on, is there anything to add about our pending application for the New Scotland converter station? I don't think there's been anything recent. Did Steve join, Laura or Heather?
I do not see him on the list.
Okay. Yeah, so
yeah,
Josh,
Bill, I don't think there's really anything else material on the amendment. No.
Okay. All right. That's that. Any questions on the update? There's not much new there, but we're happy to take any questions people may have.
Bill, I have a question. Heather from the DEC. I was curious if there is any update on, any of the preparation for the monitoring work that you're looking to that you'll have to do beginning next year, the financial items close. on time.
Well, funny you should ask. You want to talk, Josh? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's been. We've kind of discussed it with you folks. I think so. I guess over the last 3 months, no, there's been no real work on that, and that's because we've got time over the winter to iron out any final details there. So I think the short answer is since June, really, there's not been a lot of work attention on that, and because we got time.
Right. And the only reason I say funny you should ask is the closing team has been engaging with the environmental advisors that the financing banks are going to be relying on, and they asked the same question last week, so we gave them the same answer. Anything else?
Well, I guess I just want to make sure that we have an open communication that maybe goes beyond this meeting time slot in the next one, which is December, because, you know, I just have concerns that we wait until the last minute, and there continues to be changes on the Hudson. The storm events have caused increased heights of water, temperatures are changing, and that's not going to be different. You know, it's always going to be changing, and I just don't want to wait till the last minute to have some of the final discussions. I also am a little bit concerned about waiting till the last minute to review the EMCP, just because it is going to be a very hefty project to review, and we haven't received any kind of even preliminary draft or any idea even the format's going to come in. And, you know, I'm just a little bit worried that the financial surety is going to come, and then you think that we can just go right ahead with the next steps of this.
So Heather, it's Josh. I'm happy. You know, we've engaged on this previously. I'm happy to, you know, get the conversation going again, remind ourselves exactly where we left it off. I think many of the items have been closed, but I understand not everything is completed. So I'm happy to, I'll reach out to you separately to like check in on status and understand any kind of new concerns or updates you have.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome.
And I don't know whether we reported this in June. I've actually forgotten what the minutes say, but, you know, EM&CP number 1, the first segment, is going to be upland, up in basically Washington County, you know, from the exit point in Lake Champlain down towards Saratoga. So it doesn't involve Lake Champlain or the Hudson River. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bill. I just want, I get that. It's just doing any work in the river can be complicated. So I just don't want to wait till the last minute. So I appreciate Josh reaching back out to us. And I would assume when you do that, you'll include Sita and Greg from the DEC, at least initially.
Yep, and I'll get Sean. Yep, I can do that.
Hi, sorry, this is
Sorry about that.
this is Haley. Sorry to interrupt, but it looks like Dan from APA is having trouble connecting from Raybrook. I was wondering if somebody, I guess on the DPS end, is trying to connect.
Roger, could you mute yourself? You seem to be causing some feedback.
Thank you. Can we fix the Raybrook technical problem from our end, or maybe he should just call in on the phone?
Yeah, I believe I can't control the video from there, so I'd recommend calling in.
Well, should we continue? Or give them more time?
I just emailed him the phone number again. Why don't we continue?
Okay. The other business, I think I did 4B, the trust agreement. So 4A is really, who's on from the foundation?
I'm here, Bill, and Jim Law. This is John Kramer.
Okay, thank you.
Let me give you an update. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to hear and see you all. I hope you're all well. I want to just follow up on the memo that you all should have had that got distributed. Thanks for the folks that distributed that. Hopefully there's no surprises here. This follows directly from what we spoke about in the June meeting. At that point, we identified two tasks. One was to begin to populate the technical work groups, and then the second was the beginning to define the process to reach consensus among the work groups internally, and then to be able to move projects forward when the funding becomes available. I want to thank everybody for their quick response over the summer. I know it's always hard to get responses during that time of the year for the population of the technical work groups. There's a table in the memo that was distributed to you. And I think this is a really good start to the technical work groups. There's some crosstalk between them already, and folks who are really going to be able to provide really good input to this process as we're moving forward. I also want to make sure that we touch base now on there's concerns or at least interest in making sure that there are others who are not part of the governance committee that are able to contribute to the technical work groups. We don't have a process for that yet, but I think that's surely on the table now. It's a broad constituency that will want to be able to interact. And I think it opens up another question, at least in my mind, as to they're called technical work groups, but in fact, there will likely need to be other kinds of technical and stakeholder information that is brought into this process, either as through membership on the technical work groups or a variety of other, for lack of a better term, review and consensus building process. So I think that's something that I'd like to start with today, and at least get some feedback from you all on that. If you can take a look at table 1, just to make sure that's correct. And then if there are any thoughts on how we might formally broaden the technical work groups, I'd like to hear that from everybody now, if possible.
Hi, this is Bob Lockton with a question. What table are you referring to?
There was a separate memo that was distributed.
I see. Okay.
There it is right now. Sorry.
Yeah.
So this table represents all the individuals who had asked for representation on the 2 different technical work groups, Lake Champlain and then the Hudson River and New York Harbor. And if you can scan through that, those are all the folks that are now will be formally approved.
If we, on behalf of the city, if we had additional people to add, I assume we could add them as we move along.
Yeah, and I think the question really is, these are termed technical work groups, and to really think through, are they providing solely technical input? Are they helping to prioritize? What other pieces of the puzzle need to be in place? What other systems need to be in place to ensure that the best information is moving forward in the prioritization process, the best scientific review that can help this go forward? And that really is important. And I think beyond that, certainly that stakeholder viewpoints are actually represented as well. I know all of you represent broad constituencies. Now, you may not have had a lot of time to think about this now, but I think going forward into the next several months, perhaps before the next meeting. I'll touch on that in a second. We'd like to hear your thoughts on that. So the two pieces of this are there other people who should be formally on the technical work group, and then to begin at some point a dialogue on the exact roles of the technical work groups, both codified in the agreement, but also what we think is going to be most effective, most efficient, and most transparent moving forward. So that's that. And we're happy to take your comments by email. You can send them to me at the Hudson River Foundation. We'll collate those and be able to bring those back to the full governance committee as we move forward. At this point, hearing no input from you, I want to touch on the second task that was identified in June, which is really to begin to identify the consensus building process, and how ultimately you all will set priorities for the use of funds when they ultimately become available. As I mentioned before, responsibilities of work group members and leadership. I know that communication within the work groups and any other bodies that are formed and across those work groups is going to be really important, how we facilitate that. And moving forward, there are a variety of other pieces in this really process heavy and process focused approach. At this point, I think this will require a fair amount of input and from all of the participants, particularly you and potentially others. And my suggestion would be, as we've noted before, when we get some surety on when we're going to move from period 1, where we are now, into period 2, which is when the financial close occurs. I mean, when that happens, I think we as the facilitators in the process would really kick off all of our efforts to bring you together. I think we're still a bit in the waiting mode, although it seems to be somewhat optimistic today. And I think that would be the time to really ask you through not just these meetings, but there would have to likely be a variety of other kinds of email and other meetings to begin to codify how the actual process will work and ultimately have that approved. So I'll leave that on the table for now, but I think the next step would be for us to have that surety on when the close is going to occur.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I pick up on the sensitivity here, because if the next meeting is in mid-December and the closing is a week away or a month away, I guess we do have the winter period to sort of sort things out, but planning to build the consensus, you don't want this to be overwhelmingly process oriented, right? The actual selection and execution of the projects is the mission. But I think your point is well taken.
Well, Bill, I think from my perspective, having been around these kind of things for a while, I don't think you want them overwhelming, but you want them to be appropriate.
Yeah.
And in my mind, the key adjectives to use are inclusive, transparent, and leading to consensus that everyone can get behind. And then recognizing there's not a lot of money for the first 4 years. And so I think as we discussed at the last meeting, we want to make sure that whatever happens in those 4 years builds confidence in that process. There's certainly these things evolve over time, but if we start them correctly, and again, I'm not a huge fan of overly administrative and creating more work for people, but I do believe they have to be appropriate and transparent and really lead to a consensus that everyone can work with.
Yeah, that was almost like a mission statement. That was well done. But of course, it's got to be more than a mission statement.
Sure.
I'm just trying to think as a practical matter, what could and should we do to sort of facilitate this between now and December?
Well, I think my sensitivity now, Bill, is to be sure that we don't ask people to put a lot of work in until we really do have that surety that close is going to occur.
Yeah. Well, I would think that before the December meeting, we would have a sense which we could advise the committee of what the schedule is, right? It's just very difficult to predict right now. Well, we certainly can't predict the exact schedule for the funding. And it's difficult to know exactly when, we'll be in that last. I've been to a few big project financing closings in my day, and they are very tough to predict. I certainly would think that the minute that we know we're within, a month of actually signing documents, we would be advising all the stakeholders, since the stakeholders here have an interest in the closing. I mean, that's been part and parcel of the deal since the certificate was issued and the joint proposal was executed. It's we're kind of partners on that ride.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess we would feel an obligation to keep the committee advised of developments in terms of our closing preparations. And other than saying that we'll provide appropriate information as soon as we possibly can, and we hope that will be before the next meeting, is about all we can say. I mean, I don't know, Josh, is there anything further we could sort of? It's just not possible to say, no later than Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think the best we can do is just update this committee as our plans solidify. But we are spending a lot of effort and time getting ready for that financial close at the end of the year, and we can just update in the coming months. I think that's the best we can do.
Okay.
So one thing that might be useful to do from our end, and I would ask all of you to respond to this, is if the document, if you can scroll down to the next page, there's a very, very rough general approach right now, and it's if it would be useful, we can flesh this out a little bit. I'm hesitant to ask people to do much work on it other than for us to propose to go from this simplistic diagram to a slightly more fleshed out framework. And if that would be useful to have people at least thinking about that as you begin to move through that notification process for all of us, we can do that. And I think that's probably the first step moving forward. If that seems that it would be useful, we can create a slightly what I hope will be a thoughtful approach in the diagram form, and we can distribute that prior to the December meeting. I think that might be a useful next step, if you all agree.
Well, I think for the certificate holders, we think it is a good idea, and we thought this was a great first step. This is really the first heavy duty thinking we've been doing about it, and yeah, I mean, if it could be fleshed out more based on input from the parties, and if people want to get their crayons out and draw other diagrams or supplement the diagram, or that would be fine. And yeah, the timing would be right. I mean, especially if we're within weeks or so of a closing, to get something on the agenda that we could really endorse formally, I think would be a great idea. So, if we have a consensus, why don't we put it on the agenda, for a further discussion and possible action on whatever we're calling it, a protocol of some sort. And then in the meantime, continue the good work that the foundation and the parties have already done to get this started. I think it's a great there's a framework there that really, to my mind, works. And, you know, I'm sure it could be made better. And if you're taking the laboring ore at the foundation, that's all to the good.
Yeah, this is Richard Webster. Can I just say something about this? I mean, I think it just seems to me maybe the outside input comes in nominating projects. So it seems to me that we need a process for nominating projects, and then we need a process for prioritizing those projects. And maybe the outside input can come in the nominations process, so we can actually have an open call for projects, and then prioritize them within the committee.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think that's an important idea, and I think that you know, there's essentially there's this decision-making process. Then there's a as you said, there's a solicitation process, and then there's a review process as well that have to be built into all these things so that they take into account input from a broader community, the validity of the projects, what can be learned from the project. So I think your point is really well taken. Okay, so what we will commit to do from the foundation's end now is to generate again it will really be a very general diagram that expands upon this, and you know, we'll have that for December. You know, our goal is not to fully flesh this out. Our goal is not to cast anything in stone. It really is to create something that when the time is right, all the parties can weigh in on, and that will take time, I think, and it's going to take work. If, on the other hand, if there are particular things that you want to share with us beforehand as we do that, please let me know. We'd be happy to talk to you and take input in any way that's appropriate. And so with that, I'll turn it back to Bill.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, you know, we're so focused at our company on getting this over the finish line that it's great to have the partners on the committee here chip in and get us ready for the big day. So unless there's an objection, I think we'll record in the minutes that the process that the foundation has undertaken is going to continue, and with a goal of at the December meeting having a somewhat more fleshed out system, protocol, whatever we want to call it, for doing the sort of things that we've discussed: an information gathering stage, sort of a solicitation stage, and then a decision making stage based on, you know, what we receive from a broader group of a broader universe of interested parties. So I think that's a very positive thing to put into the process. All right. Thank you very much for that. What's left? Are we down to next meeting? Oh, action items. Do we have any action items here to think about? There's nothing. I think we have a standing obligation to tell you if anything at the Transmission Planning Advisory Subcommittee of the Niceo involves either queue position 631 or 887. There's nothing to report there. Is that the only standing item, action item, or is there another one?
The confirming room availability that the vice chair does. Thank you, Heather, for always doing that. There was a question about Riverkeeper withdrawing from the trust, and if there was from the trust committee, and if there was a procedure for doing that. That was a new action item at last month that I think I'm not sure if that was completed.
Well, I think the question was, there's a provision in the agreement that says that if a member misses 2 consecutive meetings, and I don't think Riverkeeper did, then they no longer count in the quorum count. That's the only thing that's in there about it. And Richard, I presume you're not withdrawing from the committee.
No. that item came as a surprise to me because that certainly didn't originate from me. And I think we may have missed one meeting, but generally, I think we've generally been pretty regular attenders. And just to be clear, we're being very careful to abide both by our trust obligations and by our obligations in the joint proposal.
Yeah. No. So I think that's off the action item agenda.
Okay. Thank you. So then there aren't any specific new action items. The next meeting is December 14th at 10:30.
Okay, maybe we'll do it in person. Wouldn't that be nice?
I think the new suspension of the open meetings law goes until January, so it's not required to be in person, but again, if you let me know in advance, I can open up the boardroom and you're welcome to come.
I'll bring donuts or something to entice people to come. Apologies. All right. So we have the meeting on December 14th. There'll be a lot happening over the next few months. I guess we'll entertain a motion to adjourn if anyone wants to make that motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Wow, we're doing this in 45 minutes or less. That's great. We adjourned at 11:12. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.